About a year ago, we released the Aussie Green Biz Mastery course, and I can honestly say it's one of the more meaningful things that I've ever done. We've had people buy the course, start their business, and within 12 months, they're already turning over $40,000 a month, employing people, doing amazing stuff. Others have been hesitating over $60 an hour jobs when they first started. 3-4 months later, they're averaging well over $120 an hour for the entire month, month after month. I've had multiple people reach out and say, hey, I've won my first commercial contract, or I've been able to quit my full-time job, and it's some of the most amazing stuff. I even had multiple people message me saying they've already got the value of the course within the first day. Multiple people have done that. So if you're the sort of person who's wanting to start your business or who's new in business, maybe you're great at the tools, you're not great at the business side, and you want to take your lawn and garden business to the next level, this course is for you. There's a 7-day money-back guarantee. The last thing I don't want to do is to waste anybody's money. So if after 7 days you're not comfortable with it, you get your full money back. But anyways, if you're wanting to sign up, the link is in the description. Let's get into the podcast. All right, welcome to today's episode of the Australian Lawn and Garden Podcast. We have another business-focused episode, and I've got a brand new guest, Tom Banks. He is a former contractor, someone who's really active on LMCA, and now you're working in mining, you're working in software, you've started helping people out with coaching. So this is going to be, hopefully, a vicarious coaching call where we can help some people on the internet run their businesses a little bit better. Welcome to the podcast, Tom.
Thanks, Luke. It's a pleasure to be here with you. And yes, that's a good, quick intro about me. My background quickly is I'm a mining engineer, so a very process-driven person. Obviously, as you mentioned, a contractor. And then back working in mining software, but still have a passion for the industry and business in general. So that's what's keeping me in.
Well, I feel like there's a type of person who becomes a contractor who their mentality, the strength that they have, that they are not afraid to go out on their own. They're not afraid to take risks. They are hardworking. They're picking an industry where they know things are going to be tough physically. So there's a lot of positives. If we're honest about the negatives, what you just said there about being process-driven, no. There's a lot of people in here. Admin is rubbish. Organisation, rubbish. Communication, rubbish. And we don't need to assault anybody, but I bet you there's a lot of people who've just been convicted, driving their car, sitting on their lawnmower, whippersnipping some edges, and they're like, yeah, that's me. So hopefully we can help some people in that. So when you work with people, is that one of the biggest things that you're working with them on? Systems, procedures, or is it generic stuff? Is it more simple stuff? Is it really complicated? What are the problems you're usually facing?
There's a big range of different issues that I see that people have when I speak to them. Most people know what they need to do. It's a combination of the actual implementation of doing whatever they know that they need to do. And then there's an emotional part to that where it's, why am I not doing it? As you may be aware, like with podcasts like yours, AI, information is becoming easier to come by. But that doesn't necessarily translate into people putting those processes in place or doing the things that they need to do.
So they know what they need to do. Is that down to the very, very specifics, or is that more like, well, I need to market more, or I need to be more organised, but the specifics are not there?
Yeah, I would say people know in general what they need to do, and that most people are resourceful enough, especially if they've gone into business for themselves, resourceful enough to find out the specifics. But then it's around, how do I actually go about doing that? Maybe it's a limiting mindset, or they're not sure how to get started. Sometimes it's also just an accountability thing of just the consistency around doing the tasks that they need to do.
Yeah. And so having somebody be there, you got a monthly call or fortnightly call, weekly, I don't know what the usual schedule is, but having somebody there forces you to get on top of it. Be like a personal trainer, makes you work out because you booked in an appointment.
Yeah, some of the people that I work with, they probably get annoyed at me sometimes just because I'm bothering them and making sure that the things that they promised to do, that they're actually doing.
Yeah. Well, how about we get into the AI conversation straight away? 'Cause I'm not that maybe either of us are experts, but it is very. It's in this one hand, it's a little scary for some people to see how quickly things are changing. On the other hand, some people are super optimistic about what that could mean for businesses like this industry, because it seems to be the case that it's actually the sort of computer-based roles that are being replaced, or replaced might be a bit aggressive, but helped out, supported the most easily. And if you look at our industry, that's where we suck at computer-based roles on average. Are you finding, or what are you finding specifically as the most helpful stuff coming out for AI for lawn and garden businesses right now?
There's a lot of ways that AI can help businesses worldwide, but in Australia as well. Some of the key things, as you mentioned, is the admin side. A lot of the bookkeeping softwares are coming out with some good stuff. This is all talking real early days AI growth, but further down the line, there's going to be a lot more integration with all of the data that people are gathering, whether that's through their CRM or accounting softwares, even GPS in their vehicles. All that type of stuff will eventually be able to be consumed and then given back to the owner in valuable insights. That's probably a while away, but overall, I think it's going to be great. And I think I've heard you say on another podcast that it's great for this industry because it will never, shouldn't say never, but it will be a long time before we can replace the physical side of the job. So the less we can do in the office and on the admin side, I think the better overall for the industry.
I wonder, yeah, like it's like you say, it's you tread a dangerous ground to start saying with any confidence what will or won't happen. But my gut feel is that even if the technology was available, like I kind of feel this with cars, right? You could technically have cars be self-driving, but maybe there's certain situations where you wouldn't be comfortable with that. You know, if you had a robot that could cut a hedge, would you still be comfortable with a robot in your front yard with a hedge trimmer or a chainsaw or a line trimmer? And maybe the government, maybe they won't. Maybe, you know, we got to prepare for anything. But that's my summary of the situation here. But I also find that on the flip side, here's an interesting thing. I wonder if AI will become kind of like the default, so administratively, and that there would still be a massive advantage for businesses that have human beings and have that point of touch and point of organization, because certain people just prefer it that way. So I'm there's not really a question there, but what are your thoughts generally on that sort of stuff? Because there's so much coming out, I'm not really sure exactly what will happen. We're all just taking stabs in the dark. So what's your stab in the dark on that stuff?
I agree 100% with that. Where there needs to be that human touch and identifying those areas of your business is going to be critical going forward. And the key example is there's already AI tools out there that can answer phone calls for you, book in jobs, etc. But if you use those in a way where there's a person still answering the majority of the time, is going to be that sweet spot where people are still getting the human connection with using the AI tools, where they either wouldn't be able to pick up the phone or that they just might go through the voicemail and then they call the next contractor, you know?
Yeah. And that's enormous. We had a job yesterday. Somebody called up. It was a school. They've been disorganised. And they've had a new playground installed. It's almost finished. And they hadn't organised anyone to put the mulch in, right? And we're talking 30 cubic metres of mulch because they want it really thick, big playground, right? And it's really interesting because they call us up and they go, can you do it in 2 weeks? And Carrie sent me through the thing because she was like, oh, this seems complicated. I call it that afternoon. I give them a ballpark price. You know, it's in the thousands. And they basically don't care about the price because we were just organised. We got back to them and they're like, oh, these people seem reliable. And there's a huge value to that. And we're probably going to make $500 more than maybe we would have usually, you know, just profit in your back pocket because of that customer service. So, you know, who knows? Who knows if AI is going to get to that point where they can do that for you, because there's still the complicated little bits and pieces, and yeah, it's tough.
It will probably get there just with the rate of technology, improvements exponentially increasing over time. It will probably get there one day, but for the time being, in the next few years, it's still going to rely on that human input for sure. On that same note, though, that's something that I do work with a lot of my customers on, is ensuring that they're putting their efforts to improve the areas of their business that are going to help the most. So for people who are into the technicality, that's using the theory of constraints framework, where you just solve whatever the biggest constraint in your business is right now. And what you're talking about there with getting back to people quickly, I think you've talked about a number of times, but that's a critical part of business, in any business, getting back to people quickly and having those personal communications.
A lot of people have been reaching out and they've been saying, when is this MoQuote app going to be ready? The quoting side specifically. We've been working on it. And believe it or not, it is on my phone right now. I could show it off to you, but the problem is there's some back-end stuff with payments and signing up and all that sort of stuff to do with Apple and Android, and that's taking some time. So we wanted to get it right. We have so many people who have downloaded waiting for that to come out. And we will have a podcast coming out soon. So just keep your eyes and ears peeled. We'll have a podcast coming out soon, this time with the team. And we're going to show you exactly how it works. And the first release, again, it's a small team. It's going to take time to do this. But I'm glad that everyone's excited. I'm glad that I'm getting multiple messages like, hurry up, get your act together. It shows that there's a real positive feel around it. Anyways, let's get back into the podcast. If you've been thinking about getting to ride-on mowing this season, or you want to upgrade the ride-on mower you currently have a look at the Hustler range. Like I said before, I've been using them for almost 10 years now, and I can honestly say they are some of the most versatile and reliable machines I have ever used. One of the things about Hustlers is you can use them on overgrown jobs, and you know I did a lot of those in the early days, but take that same mower and put it on a highly manicured lawn and it still does a really good job. Hustlers have a great range all the way from the 34-inch dash to the Super 104, which is a 104-inch wide mower. Add to that the Raptor range, Fast Track, X1, Super Z, Super S, and you know that Hustler likely have a mower that suits your budget and your goals. In addition, Hustler have 130 plus dealers across the country, which means, heaven forbid, if something were to go wrong, you know that help is not far away. And that is crucial if you're relying on that machine for your income. I'm really honored that Hustler have come on board to support the podcast, because it's a brand I truly believe in. If you want to get into ride-on mowing this season, like I said, check out the range. Thank you, Hustler, for support. Hustler, here to work. I'll ask you a bit of a specific question here that relates to this. Let's say I'm coming to you, Tom, and I'm doing $80 an hour, and I'm kind of happy with it. I'm not dying. I'm not starving, right? My business is maybe efficient enough. Maybe I'm not driving too far, but I know I'm under the market. I know the market, is a little bit higher than that. But I look at it and I've gone, what if I'm super optimistic and I go, by this time next year, I want to start earning $200 an hour. What steps would I start taking now? Or what steps would you work with me to get me to that place? What questions would you ask? How about we go through a little process here and we'll see what we can do and what we can come up with?
Yeah.
Because there will be people who are thinking about that sort of stuff listening to this right now.
Sure. So obviously the first thing is that realistic. Maybe $200 in your market is realistic, or maybe it's not. But whether it is or not, there'll be a number that's a lot higher than what you're currently doing that is possible. So the first step is it possible or not? Secondly, then, is where you currently are and mapping from where you are to where you want to go. From there, I start to ask questions around, what's your marketing look like? How many leads are coming in? The reason why that's my first port of call is because a lot of the pricing engagements that I get, it's an emotional barrier that blocks people from raising the prices.
Yes.
And what unlocks that emotional barrier is knowing that they've got more leads to be able to fill customers that they may lose.
Okay. So let's start one by one. First thing you said is, can you actually get that? Can you get that in your market?
Yep.
What are the things that are limiting people from getting really high hourly rates?
I would say it's mostly around the emotional things, because the majority of people are doing great work and their customers value them a lot more than they're charging. So
Yep.
there's an immediate increase that people can normally get without losing a bunch of customers. And that is an internal thing. Externally, there's the general things like, are you putting forward a consistent brand with uniforms, your vehicles? Is it a premium style brand? Because if you're going to be charging high prices, you need to put forward that the branding as a premium service. There's no way that you're going to go around in a Kmart high vis and be charging $200 an hour, as an example.
Yeah. Well, I guess the Kmart high vis if you rocked up in everything else gone well, but if you got the thongs and the holes in the shirt, and yeah, I do agree. Let's go a little bit slower here, because you're the first thing. If someone was to say to me, "Here's why I can't charge $200 an hour," and obviously that's a nice round number, but high hourly rate.
Yep.
What they would say to me is, "You can't get those rates in my area," right? Which is really interesting, because I speak to people all over the country, and I often know people fairly close who are getting those rates at some point. But their mindset is that it's something external to them that is stopping them from getting those hourly rates. And your first answer was it was internal. It's their own limiting belief. One of the things that we teach a lot in the course is that confidence comes when your opportunity exceeds your capacity.
Yep.
And so when you are getting a hell of a lot of opportunity, it's not even like a magical thing. It's just a practical thing. You start getting sick of answering the phone, and you start giving the "I don't want to do it" price, and all of a sudden it gets answered. And often that shatters people's glass ceilings that have been holding them down. Are there other ways that we can go about shattering those glass ceilings? Some might be easy, some hard. What do you do when you're working with people?
Yep. So that is exactly in line with what I tell people to look at in terms of making sure their marketing is good to get the leads to break that. But another thing that I often recommend is ranking their customer base from the best customers in their opinion to the worst. And that might be the property type, how much communication is required, the price. It could be a number of things. And then just testing with the lower end of their customer base. Because the other thing that a lot of people come and think that they need to raise all of their prices at once. We don't have to do that. You could raise 5 customers at a time and test how that goes, and then raise the next 5 to a higher number. But starting at that lower end of your customer base, you're not risking a lot, especially if you've got new leads coming in. And that often in itself, along with ensuring that leads are coming in, is enough to give people that confidence that, yes, I can raise my prices here.
Do people often come to you and their number one problem is that their leads are not coming in?
I would say people think that their pricing is an issue, but when you dig down into it, there's other things at play. And marketing is one area that the people, in general, people that I talk to are not great at. They're great operators, right? So the business side is not always to the level that it should be or needs to be for a growing business. So the answer is yes. Oftentimes the marketing is probably not at a level that is sufficient for that business size.
So what should we be doing then to take that marketing? Because even the conversations I've had with people, how I used to feel about it is, it seems like it's too daunting to do marketing. It seems like I'm going to put a lot of money into something and waste it. If I go print 10,000 flyers and they don't work, that's a lot of money and time. If I put ads on Facebook, that seems complicated. So how do you start guiding someone through that process?
Again, I'll look at what they're currently doing, and I sort of use a framework of do more of what you're doing first.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, do it better, and then try something different if you've tapped out the market or you can't get results.
Yeah.
So if they're doing anything, we look at that first, and if that's working, we just do more, because that's the easiest and simple way to increase that.
Mm-hmm.
If someone came and they have zero, they're just relying on word of mouth, just like in many other suggestions I think you've had on your podcast, start with some of the free stuff, Google business profile, a cheap website. You can do a small test of flyers, 500 to 1,000, and just start the marketing process. And again, similar with the pricing, once people get into it and start doing a few marketing activities, it doesn't seem so daunting. For businesses that may be slightly larger and they might be doing stuff already, that's when I start to look at Google advertising or Facebook advertising at the moment are probably the two most effective that are online. But we never look over hard marketing. So flyers is probably one of the best ways that people can consistently get new leads coming in.
Right, so you're a fan of flyers.
Yep. Yes, you may get low response rates, but the benefit to flyers is the timing that you can do with them, if done correctly, can be very effective in terms of timing your services throughout the year. So just before winter, doing flyers for mulching and cleanups, coming into spring, making sure that all the mowing is the focus on those flyers can do quite well. And the benefit is it's quite scalable in terms of you could do 1,000, 5,000, 10,000, depending on your market size, but it's quite scalable. Whereas your Facebook marketing and Google ads are sort of set it and forget it. You can't scale it up too much depending on the keywords that you're targeting. Obviously, there's some nuance to that, but yeah, I like a varied approach. The other thing I do often see is people who are doing some marketing sometimes come and they're doing too many marketing activities. They're trying lots of different avenues all at once, and in doing that, they're not doing any well.
Right.
Like the easiest savings that I can give someone is looking at their Google marketing if they're doing a lot already, and oftentimes they're spending too much on their Google ads because they're targeting certain keywords and they're just overspending for those option spaces.
Yeah, I agree. I think Google, Facebook also have the problem, especially Facebook now, which you're not getting with flyers, of there being bot activity. And we had this recently. We've put some ads out and gone back into that market because we're wanting to expand this spring. And that's a different conversation. I think advertising in winter is one of the best things you can do to grow your business in the spring. But we'll come back to that later. But so we've started advertising on that way, and we've historically had such good SEO. We get 200,000 plus people a year on our website that we haven't needed to expand. We have much more than what we wanted.
Yep. So
we put our money back into some ads. And what's interesting is with the Facebook stuff, we start off having an insane cost per click onto the website.
Mm-hmm.
It was super low, and we were like, wow, we're going to get a lot of calls from this. And then we weren't getting anywhere near as much as we'd expect. And then we had to look into the numbers, and a lot of the bot activity, you can tell, people are coming on and immediately leaving.
Yep.
And that's usually a telltale sign of a bot. And it made me really suspicious because have you heard of the dead internet theory?
No, I haven't.
Around? So it's kind of it's not really a conspiracy theory. There's a bit of a conspiracy theory in it, but the dead internet theory is basically that the vast majority of activity on the internet is actually just bot activity, and the internet as a whole is dead. And the conspiracy side comes into it when people say that this is how they rig elections and things like that because they make all the bots be right-leaning or left-leaning or whatever. But it's a really interesting thing because how would you prove against that, especially now with AI? And so I have literally been thinking recently, maybe I need to get back into some more physical signs, flyers, one for the local, niche target. It's in the area you want it to be in. But two, because I don't know. We'll see. We'll give it a few months. Keep being persistent. But it is an interesting theory. Like, how much of this click am I paying for is not even a human being?
No, 100%. And that you'd go down the technical path there to try to qualify out those bounced website visitors, so that you're only looking at visitors that are staying more than 5 seconds or whatever the number is. But like having a variety of marketing channels is always beneficial. And it may not be flyers, like you said, signs, local events. I know you're doing that with your podcast. All of these things can work, and you just have to look at other businesses and say, if they're doing it, then something must be working. Look at the biggest companies around, McDonald's, some of the big service businesses, they're doing flyers, so it works.
Yeah. Fascinating. It's a really interesting, it's an interesting world to get into, and this is why it gets overwhelming for people, because they go, which one should I pick? Which one should I not do? And so, okay, if you're into the flyers, do you, obviously not against everything else, but that's the one that you're usually recommending by the sounds of it. Are you getting the gardener themselves to deliver them? Are you saying, no, pay for a service? I guess maybe it depends on how many you're putting out, but what's the process you're usually going with that?
Yeah, so that will directly depend on how much time they have available. I think you've talked about this before. If you've got time available in your schedule, you should be doing something in that time, whether it's admin or marketing, which could be used to drop flyers. If you're already busy and you're priced right, which means you're making some profit, then you can start to use that profit to pay for the flyer delivery or other marketing. And just to be clear, I'm not against other marketing. It's just flyers are a good place to start for many people because it's low tech. They can do it themselves if they have the time, etc.
I've been using AI for some pictures now.
Yeah.
And so let me explain, because I'm not using the AI photos in the end. But what I've done is I've gone on ChatGPT. I have the paid version, and I've said, look, I've got great professional photos of the work we do.
Yep.
Here are some of the things I wanted to advertise. Why don't you give me ideas for headlines, give me ideas for text, and give me ideas for some pictures of what that might look like? And it came up with, there's still AI images and they're not real people and stuff, but it came up with some pretty interesting stuff. And I was able to use that as an inspiration, almost like a template, to then go on Canva. Because I found that some of the Canva templates that are out there are kind of, the gardening industry, it's beauty, it's makeup, it's technology, and so they don't really fit. It's like a close-up of a phone or a mascara or something like that. And the photos don't quite work. And I found that really helpful with just, visualizing what that might look like. And I guess when I've made stuff on Canva before, and I'm pretty good at that stuff, but I've made it before, I'm like, I don't even know if this will work, and is this right? And it gives me a bit of confidence and security in that. And it's, how long till we can literally just say, I've got these photos, chuck it in there, AI makes the whole thing for you?
Oh, it's almost there now, but it is again the testing of the final product. That's the critical part. So I've done the exact same process that you just did to create a couple of logos for recent clients. I'm no graphics designer, but I can use Canva. They didn't have the budget to create any logos, so as one of the calls, we just sat down, put their brand style and description into a logo generator. Yeah. Got 20 options, picked 2 that they liked the look of, and then built them in Canva. And again, that was something that they probably didn't know that they could do, but now they made their own flyer, they did a banner for their Facebook, they did their own branding instead of paying. They got charged a coaching call, but now they have that skill for themselves, and they've built their own brand for their business. So that definitely works, but there is a testing side to that. So with flyers, the key part is A/B testing after you've started running them. So I always recommend to start off with some type of template for the first one because you don't want to start with from scratch and have something that doesn't have any results come out of it. And then start iterating on that, change a few of your descriptions or your images, send another couple of thousand. If it works better, go from there, iterate again. If it gets worse, go back to your original or your previous version and just keep iterating on it.
How much do you think someone should be budgeting a year? If let's say they're early in their business and they've really wanting to fill their books, what would be a rough budget a year for marketing for the rough average contractor? Because I think people often they get shocked at how much business costs when they're new. And obviously people have been in for 10 years, not surprised anymore. But it helps to know what they should be thinking about.
Yeah, I think that question, when you start to look at the numbers, it includes a lot of different variables. So really, I would say you should look at what's your average customer acquisition cost in your area first.
Yep.
You know, just to pull a number out of the hat, between probably $50 to $70 would be average across a year, across a variety of marketing channels. And then have a look at what's your churn in your business. So on a customer base of a solo person that's got a full book, you know, a typical number might be around 20% churn over the year, just from people moving, losing a customer here and there, which that number in itself is a lot higher than what people think. They think they don't lose that many customers, but you will just naturally lose a number of people through reasons that has nothing to do with you. That'll give you a rough number of how many customers you need to just replace the ones that you're losing. And that informs your marketing budget. The other way to go about it that I tell people, like as a super easy thing to understand, is 5% of your revenue should be a marketing budget.
Right. So if you're doing 150 grand a year, you're talking about $7,500.
Yep.
Yeah.
That would be, I would say, $7,500 for a year would be enough to maintain and grow a lawn and garden business, probably anywhere in Australia.
Well, the way I think about it as well is that I don't think you should ever stop marketing.
100%.
And maybe you should decrease marketing, right? But the reason is that people think of marketing as a way to fill their books, but it's also a way to improve your books. And like you said, go in this process of evaluating which clients you like, which ones you don't like, and continually improve your books. And it's not necessarily enjoyable to spend, say, $500 in a month on marketing and knock everybody back because you're full. But that might be the opportunity that gets you in contact with the big facility you wanted to, or gets you in contact with some really high-end clients that 3 years later give you a lot of word of mouth. And you don't know what you're missing out on when you don't do that. And often, well, not often, I don't know anyone personally who has regretted working really hard on their marketing, continuing with it and getting it right. People regret getting it wrong, but working on it to eventually get it right and then just have it keep going.
Yeah. On this topic, I like the way that Mike Andes from Augusta Lawn Care talks about this, where he says he thinks of businesses in two modes, growth mode or profit mode. In growth mode, you want to be spending, maybe it's a little bit more than 5% of your revenue on marketing. But then if you are just focusing on profit, for example, you don't want to put on another crew, you're happy with the size of your current business, then maybe you do drop down. But I 100% agree that you should never stop marketing, because marketing is not just to fill your books, like you said. It's just getting you, increasing your awareness of your business. So, you know, like you said, that's also awareness for your current customers to know that you are still there, you are able to provide additional services, and then on top of that, get those new customers to fill the churned places.
Yeah. You've lost a light.
Yes. If you give me 1 second, I will turn it
You look like the Sith Dark Lord now who's coming to,
There we go.
He's back. He's back on the light side. No, I don't mean any disrespect for this by people, because it is a positive sign in a certain aspect, but you see people on, Facebook groups or even talk to you in person about how proud they are that they've never spent money on marketing because it's all word of mouth. And, for a certain perspective, that is good because obviously if you were rubbish at your job, you wouldn't be able to sustain that, right? So it does say that you are, competent and good. But I just listen to that and I go, I wonder what you've missed out on. 10 years of not marketing, how many amazing phone calls have you not had because of that?
100%.
I can tell you so many different stories of just little things that come through because you just keep marketing, you keep it going, you keep it on, and just little things, and they turn to big things. And if we were word of mouth alone, I don't think we would have hit the success that we've had.
No, marketing is just the fuel that you put on the fire of good work. If you're not doing good work in your business, throwing money at marketing is not going to help you.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're just doing good work and not doing any marketing, all of that good work is not getting out there. No one is aware that you're doing all that good work, and that's where the growth comes from, right?
Mm.
I can give you an example there. So that also links back to having a process in place. When I was running my business, I was full. I still had a subscription to one of the well-known lead platforms that everyone probably knows. It's quite expensive now. And everyone, I was thinking, let's cancel this. It's not really giving me anything. But I had put in place and bought myself a very expensive Garmin watch so I could get instant notifications. And I'd set up notifications for the areas that I wanted to be in. Mm-hmm. One lead came through. I knew it was in the area that I wanted. Mm-hmm. And I called that lead within 30 seconds of it coming through. And that lead ended up turning into a personal residence of a multi-million-dollar business owner who was spending about 20 grand a year in services.
Wow.
So that's a mix of making sure you get back to people quickly, a good process, and not turning that marketing off.
Mm. Well, this leads me into another thing which I'm really strongly trying to advocate for, which is to have some sort of administration support. So at the moment, my wife is the administrator of the business. We do have some help with that. We have tried people overseas in the past. There's limits to that. There's good and bad with it. You save money, but maybe you don't get as high quality. But we had this story the other day. A client who has been with us for a long time, or had worked with us for a long time, they sent us a message and they say, we've got some yuccas that we want to remove. They had 8 yuccas. Now, we've got photos of the yard, right? So we immediately got back to them and we said to them, look, Carrie just messaged me, what do you think? I said, look, just tell them it'll be $650, right? And they are, I don't know, probably gutter height. So not the biggest things you ever had. They can get enormous, these things. Not the hugest trunks. And they didn't want them dug out. They just want them cut to ground level. So we're like, okay, that's fine. So I go, I'm going to give them the I don't want to do it price, $650. So we sent it through. And because it was so quick, right, I just think they were like, we can't even bother getting other prices, So they just go, okay, fine, we'll go with it. Elliot rocks up to do the job. And the guy comes out the front and he goes, oh, look, I'm sorry, but I've kind of had a little bit of a change of mind, if that's all right. My wife doesn't, she sort of likes him and this and that. Can we just sort of like remove these couple and cut these ones down a little bit? And, I don't want to. And then he goes, yeah, I can do that. And Elliot in his mind's gone, praise the Lord, because it's like significantly reduced the amount of work he wants to do. And, everyone knows how hard it is. Yeah. Anyway, so Elliot goes, look, I'll have to chat with my boss about the work, how much we can, do the price for whatever. But I think we can reduce it for you a little bit. Anyways, Elliot's there for 30 minutes, like literally 30 minutes. Gets it all done in the back of a trailer. He doesn't have to go the tip on his own now. He can keep doing jobs. So, it's a huge amount of waste saved and everything. And he sends through the carry and he's like, I'm embarrassed to charge them $650 for this. What do you reckon? And she messages me and she goes, what do you think we should do? And I just go, let's just go half past $325. And we sent it through that afternoon, like hours later. It's paid. And they are so happy because they feel like they're getting an amazing deal. We just made $325 in half an hour of work, and the client feels like they have an amazing deal. And where did that come from? Administration. It came from being organised. It came from being really quick, good with the communication. Like just that sort of stuff. And I don't know what that makes the average for the day. I don't know what the rest of the jobs that you had on, but I would guess that his hourly rate, considering that $300 in half an hour is $600 an hour, his average hourly rate for the day was through the roof, because we charge pretty handsomely normally. That is the sweet spot of business. And I wonder how many people are missing out on those opportunities. One, they're not marketing, so they never even call them. But two, they're so slow. Maybe they can't afford admin, but that Garmin idea you've got, or maybe they literally just go, I am going to make a habit of every time I get in the car, I'm sacrificing a minute to reply to somebody. And you don't underestimate how powerful a simple, hey, I'm out in the tools right now, I've got the message, it is something we might be interested in, I'll organise something tonight. Something like so powerful, especially when everybody else is silent or taking 2 or 3 hours to get back to you. You're probably talking a lot to people about this sort of stuff.
All the time. And like one time, all the time when you say about people having processes in place, many people go straight to, what tool do I need? But that's not what a process is. A process is just consistently doing the same thing. And whether that is getting in your truck and sending your communications or replying, or making sure when at the end of the day you fill in all your times, that is process. Yep. And without that, you don't have those situations happen which you just described. The one thing that I do encourage a lot of people to do, and any business owner could take this away, is don't try to focus on too many changes if you're trying to improve your business. Just do one thing at a time. That's what my wife tells me all the time, and it is true. It's impossible to try to focus and change too many things. So if you are consistent as well in improving your business, like if you think getting back to people quicker is a critical part of business that you need to improve on, focus on that. Give it a week or two of changing your behavior until you get consistency, and then move on to your next thing.
Well, poo-pooing word of mouth a little bit is controversial, right? So we've already started going down that path, but
no, I haven't done that.
What other viewpoint or what other belief do you feel that you have maybe seen as controversial but definitely shouldn't be?
That's a good question. Probably the strength at which I believe that upselling your current customers is good for everyone. Many people think that, charging your customers more or selling them more services is just costing them money. I can guarantee you, if you're doing a good job, you are helping them save time and fix their problems. And anyone who has hired a service from any type of business and it being subpar or you can't get communication from them will know the pain of that. I recently moved house, and trying to organize bond cleaners and movers was a nightmare. And the same thing in our industry. The first people that got back to me with a reasonable price, it was like, okay, I'm a busy person, you're it. Even if I could find someone cheaper, if there was someone that got back to me quickly and seemed legitimate and like they were going to do a good job, it's sold. And many people in business, when you're always looking at it from your perspective, will not remember that. They will, sometimes you put yourself in the customer's perspective and say, this guy's getting back to me, he's giving me a price, he's also going to do these other jobs for me. Man, I love this guy. He saved me so much time and money.
Yeah. It's so underrated. Do you know, like I was today, so I was very late for this podcast, people. I'll tell you why I was late, Tom. Okay. We've been having internet issues here at the warehouse. I think they've changed something at the tower because the internet wasn't having an issue, and I've been working on it. And I realised that I needed to get an antenna because I use wireless increase my signal. Big concrete walls, metal roof isn't good for it. So
Okay.
I've been doing all this research, and I literally there's one antenna shop in Perth, as far as I'm aware, and it is an hour's drive from here. Right, I'm right south. It's right north, and anyways, I was also at the Perth Garden Show this morning, and I was halfway up there. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go to this place in Osborne Park, get the antenna. And I looked online, and I could have got the antenna for about half price if I bought it online. But I would have had to wait about a week and a half for it to come. And I have like 5 podcasts booked in for that period of time. I cancelled yesterday's podcast, partly because of other reasons, but I had half reason to cancel. The other guy had half reason to cancel. Mine was the internet, and so we rescheduled it. It's fine. It's coming up later. But I was like, I do not care. I do not care that I have to drive all that time, and I do not care that I have to pay $80 more, right, and take my bill to $266 for an antenna, because this is so much of what I do. And the internet's working fine. We haven't had any problems. We're like 45 minutes in or something like that. I'm so happy with my decision, and it cost me more money. And there is often in business many scenarios where that is the case. And everybody would have a similar story in their life. But we just never believe it's us. We never believe that it's our business that could be that person who is more expensive yet more helpful, and the client doesn't care. And I think that administration side, from the client's perspective, where they have to email, they have to chase up, they have to do everything. If you sort that out for them, right, and you're $100 more than they would go shopping, do they care? Most won't. And we'll be surprised to find out.
That is something I go through with many customers who have that mindset. Is I just get them to draw a line, horizontal line, put a dash on each side and one in the middle. One side you've got cost, other side you've got profit, and in the middle you've got price. And that price, depending on how much value you're giving them, which is the size of the line between your price and the profit, is what you can potentially raise your price up. There'll be a point where you lose more customers than it's worth, and that's where you know that's the sweet spot of your price. But many people think that the value is based on the service that you're providing, but that's not true. The value for the customer is based on their situation. And that may be a bit ethereal, but let me give you an example. If I'm doing services for, let's just say, a doctor, right? And I'm saving them doing their own yard work, might be saving them 2 hours a week. That's going to be different than doing the same property for a very wealthy business owner who's making multi-millions a year. Mm-hmm. So the value based on your client is also changing. Mm-hmm. And so that's very important to keep in mind when you are going back to your original question. If you want to get to a certain dollar value, your target customer avatar will play a part in that as well.
Changing a little bit here, but what do you think small business owners in the lawn and garden industry need to stop spending money on?
This will be a controversial one. And I'm guilty of it. So I'd say tools.
Okay. Which type of tools?
I think just in general, service-based businesses, especially trades, what is in our face every day, all day, is the equipment that we use. And so we often see more advertising for that. We want what is going to help us make more money. But many conversations I have with customers are around asset purchases and actually doing the maths behind that to ensure that those purchases are actually going to make that business money. Because many times they'll, especially for larger purchases, will buy a trailer that's not suited to them entirely, or they don't have the type of work for a specific piece of equipment. And unless they have a plan in place to get that asset utilized, then it's basically a big waste of money. And I think many people in this industry could relate to going to Bunnings or other trade store and just spending more money than you should. You go in there for one item and you walk out with 2 or 3. It's very common.
I did a poll on LMCA. Did you see this one where I asked people if you were to win $10,000,
Yes.
would you spend it on marketing or tools? And I didn't let anybody add any more options because I knew people would go, "Oh, actually, I want to spend it on this and that." No, I wanted that debate, and because I was thinking this, because my guess was correct. I thought most people would answer tools. I think it was less than I expected, but it still was 70%. I thought it'd be 80 or 85%. 70% of people said tools, 30% roughly said marketing. And I'm in the same ballpark as you. Because now, let's be kind to some of these people. Maybe they're already spending money on marketing, but the $10,000, there's a few people who answered this. It's like, if you put $10,000 into marketing, you will easily make the money that you need to get the tools.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, but there's a yin and the yang to this, because sometimes you have to, like say with ride-on mowers, sometimes you have to take a leap of faith, and you think you're going to get a lot of work, and you think it's going to be a good idea, and maybe you regret that decision. Sometimes people do it, and it's the best decision they've ever had. But I also hear certain people, like Jared Summer, let's throw him under the bus, who has 400,000 lawnmowers at his house. And you're like, Jared, I mean, he's like, I don't know. Well, he's sold a couple recently. But, how much return on investment would he got if you spent that on marketing? So,
there's definitely a caveat to that, is the stage at which the business is at. So I would say generally startups don't spend enough on equipment. So they go too long with just running 19 inches mowers, push mowers, non-self-propelled, even 21s, when they probably should go up to 30 or a small ride-on or stand on. But the more mature businesses that are, a full book, self-employed person, one person or multiple people, a couple of crews, they're probably spending too much on equipment in most cases.
So if we're going to stop spending, we should stop spending money on tools, is the idea. What we think we should be spending more money, if anything, on marketing. What do people need to stop spending their time on?
Before we go to that question, I'll add one extra thing onto that. Okay. I believe people aren't paying themselves enough.
Yep.
And they are mostly doing that because in most cases that I'm looking at, there's not enough profit margin in the business.
Yes.
So people should spend less on tools, pay themselves more, and that will show them that they're not making as much profit as they think.
The saying, a dollar saved is a dollar earned.
Yep.
That's misleading on a business front. Because if you're making a 10% profit margin of actual profit, then a dollar saved is the same as $10 earned in sales. And that's where the thing is, the word earned in business, are we talking profit or are we talking sales? So if you save $100, right, you would have to do a $1,000 job to get at a 10% profit margin to get that $100 into your back pocket. And a lot of people don't realize that. They don't realize how powerful saving money is in business. And that is often what is stopping them from paying themselves. And they think, oh, fantastic, I've won a $4,000 job. And then they go and spend $250 on something that, they think, oh, I've got heaps of profit from this $400,000 job. But if you don't know your profit margin because you're not tracking it and you're not truly paying yourself, then you might have wiped 80% of your profit from that job on one purchase and you thought you were fine.
That's exactly right. In one of my recent coaching calls with a customer, the whole coaching call was around two topics, and that was reviewing their insurance and aggregating any loans that they had, because they had quite a bit of, it was a big business, had quite a bit of debt, and their insurance they hadn't looked at in a couple of years. That one call, I forget the exact number that he told me, but it was over $5,000 a year that call saved him after 2 hours of work. And I was trying, or I tried to get across to him, and I share that story because when are you going to earn $5,000 in 2 hours of work in your business. It's not possible.
No.
And the second part that I put to him is that type of review on those expenses needs to be more frequent. So most people will look at it maybe once a year. You know, if you're in business and you've got big expenses, you need to be looking at that monthly, you know, ideally, if not quarterly at the longest.
You know, we found ourselves recently in a bit of trouble with this because we and I want to do a podcast literally on insurance soon, and go really deep dive with a broker on it. And the reason is that we signed up with a brokerage 7 or 8 years ago, and in those 8 years, that brokerage was sold twice. So it was 3 different organisations, and we had 4 or 5 different brokers. Now, the first couple of years, the person that we actually chose was great, and we liked them. The next person was mediocre, the next person was mediocre, and they all were sort of mediocre. So we didn't realise, though, that because we hadn't really sat down with them, and we just said, hey, look, we liked what we had last time, you know, just keep doing it. We'd have a look at everything, but we hadn't been as tight with those numbers as possible. We really started thinking about our expenses and looking into that, and we're like, man, we spent a lot of money on insurance. Now, we have a lot of stuff, so we thought we're spending a lot of money because we have a lot of stuff, and it was $30,000 a year was what we were paying. It was more than that, actually. It was in the 30s. And we were like, okay, what can we reduce it to? And I was like, maybe I can reduce it $5,000, $6,000, $7,000. Anyways, we worked with somebody who was really quite nitpicky, a new broker. It was $15,000 that we took off. And a lot of it was because we just worked out we don't even need to insure a bunch of stuff. Like, why am I insuring, I say like a steel whippersnipper. Okay, you might go, it's $900. I don't want a steel whippersnipper stolen, so I'm going to get it insured. But then you realise that if you claim your $900, you're going to increase your insurance bill, and your excess might be $500 anyway.
And the additional insurance that you're paying is probably a year. You're paying $900,
and so then you just end up not claiming. And we realised that over 5 years we'd had half a dozen things or whatever it was stolen that were less than $1,000. So let's just raise our excess to $1,000, and then we go, actually, if we raise our excess even more than that, I can't even remember what it's at now. We were exploring $2,000-$3,000 excess because we were like, hold on a second, that will save us $3,000 a year.
Yep.
Just put the $3,000 aside, have it always ready to go. And this was the type of conversation we had. So a really good broker actually was really helping us to save that money. And yeah, for us, it was about $15,000 a year. Now, it wasn't because we got $15,000 in better deals. It's because we just stopped insuring a bunch of stuff that we realized we were never going to claim on anyway. And what we have insured is like, if this warehouse goes up in flames, right, and we lose everything, we're going to be fine. Yeah. We'll have a, I can't remember what the excess is. Let's call it $3,000 because I said that before. We'll have a $3,000 excess. But is that really a problem? If my entire warehouse goes up in flames, do I really care that I have to pay $3,000? No. It's like, I'm glad. I'm here. Happily, you can take it. You know, I want all my stuff back. And that's for me. And I consider myself on the higher end of the spectrum of numbers-orientated people in the industry. And I just let that slip because I was just trusting brokers, ones that I hadn't even chosen because the business had been bought and sold and bought and sold and bought and sold, to just do what I wanted. But I'd never sat down and actually talked to those brokers. I'd never actually really worked out those numbers. And yeah, like we say, okay, $15,000 in profit at 10%, it's $150,000 in sales a year.
Yeah, exactly. And it goes straight in your pocket basically because it's just goes straight to the bottom line.
Yeah.
But with that story, there's 2 key components to that were probably overlooked, and it's probably everyone does it at some point, is number 1, not understanding that you still need to manage your vendors. So anyone who you're hiring to do a service for you, you still need to manage them. The idea is that you don't need to manage them the same as you would an employee, but you still need to monitor if they're giving you the service that they promised and service that's providing you a value, which when businesses are sold, vendor businesses are sold, new people taking over, that can change very quickly, right? And then the other part of that I think generally people don't do a good job of, especially in this industry, is we book ourselves up so busy that we don't give ourselves the time to think about these things. And so the one thing that I told my client in this area was that he needs to block 1 day per quarter out completely from any work. It's still a work day, so he's away from his family. And on that day, he has a list of 5 to 7 things that he works through in order, which are these tasks that never get looked at. And the fact of having a specific time to do that and making sure that you follow your own rule will give you these benefits. But that is one thing that many people don't do. They don't have enough time for their bookkeeping, their scheduling, other admin tasks, all of this.
What's a sign, or what's some other signs that you see that someone's working too much?
Almost everyone I talk to is working too much, because we all do that as entrepreneurs, I think. But I think, people only realize it when something comes to a head, whether they're sacrificing times with their family or their friends, or they have health complications. You see that often in the group. Guys will work themselves to the bone, solo for years, and to the point until they have an injury or something happen, and then they can't do it anymore. I think the realization often comes too late, but I think people who are in touch with their numbers are more likely to have success. So just looking at how many hours you're working a week is helpful. And I think you've mentioned on another podcast that you went to 4 days or 4.5 days a week.
Yep.
That's something that I recommend to almost everyone, because inevitably during busy times in this industry, you're working 10 or longer hours a day. And if you're booking 5 days a week, you're going way over what's physically possible to be on a week, like just to continue 50 plus hours every week. For most people, it's not feasible.
When you talk about, there's a lot of subjects here. So the 4.5 day, we do a 9 day fortnight, right? We think that's essential because you will burn yourself out, and it forces you to make yourself run a better business. But physically speaking, it's really hot and dry here in Perth. But the heat is here in Perth. The rain is problems over east. Like you make a business that it forces you to make a business that's going to be prepared for bad weather anyway, because you'll have some flexibility, and you can move stuff around, maybe work a weekend if you have to, but have a Wednesday off if it's rained out or whatever. But the other side of it is the injury side. And, a lot of people will listen to this. A lot of people know my story. They've heard it before on many other podcasts we've done. Obviously, I have an autoimmune condition, which, 5 years ago stopped me from working properly. And I won't be able, be going back into the field, full time, that is. But that's not as uncommon as what people think. Autoimmune maybe, but you might break a leg. You might, there's all sorts of things. I've seen people accidentally cut a finger off because they put their hand in the mower wrong. I've seen people, vision problems. I bought a business off a guy who started losing his sight and eventually wasn't able to drive anymore. And he was, he wasn't young, but he was still physically capable of doing the work. He was in his 50s, I believe. And so there's things like that happen. And one of the things that people don't buy is injury insurance. And it's hard to, couldn't tell you a price on it, but it's $2,000 or $3,000 a year for a lot of people, and is that cheap? No. But if it happened, would you regret it? No. And I think this is something that is not talked about enough in the industry at all, right? We have workers' compensation insurance for my employees, but most businesses do not have it for themselves. And it's very strange that it doesn't get talked about more, considering how many people sell up due to injuries.
Yeah, I think exactly the same as you. I'm sure that in your course you talk about it. I've talked about it with everyone. And I think it comes down to people. I don't know if you know the book E-Myth by Michael Gerber.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when he says people have the entrepreneurial seizure, they come out of a job, they're getting paid $30 an hour, so they think they can charge 40 or 50 and they'll be fine. But that doesn't take into account all the costs that are not immediate. And this is one of them. And so when we hire employees, we're forced to pay superannuation, which is forced savings. We're forced to pay workers' compensation, which is insurance. But as owners, the government says that we are intelligent enough when we start businesses to manage to manage all of that. It's not until someone points it out or there is an issue that people realize that, oh my God, I'm not charging enough because I really need to be making 40 or 50 hours or paying myself $40, $50 an hour, which means I need to charge 80 to 100 or more. So a while back, I built a little calculator, and I'm sure there's many on the internet put up in LMCA of what it would cost to hire an employee. And the first thing I tell people is if you're not paying yourself exactly the same as the employees that you hire, you need to raise your prices or do something different because you're going to end up going out of business. The number of people that I spoke to over the last 18 months where they think they're doing well, but after you dig into a few of their numbers, they're probably paying themselves less than if they're working at McDonald's and taking on all the additional risk of running a business. It's just crazy.
What's even crazier to me is that those people are the same people who will look at a business coach like yourself or look at a course that we do and go, it seems expensive. You're like, it's like, I mean,
I can relate.
You go.
And I'm not saying that to throw stones because, when most of us start, we do start with that entrepreneurial seizure and we go out, we're usually not charging enough. I think everyone has to go through that stage. The open mindset around getting help is an important one. And I was also quite against that starting out because, I don't know, maybe it was just the way I was brought up. I think we can do things all of ourselves. But if we think about our lives as a whole and the help we get through our lives, we have parents who help us when we're young. We have school teachers that teach us things. If you go out into the workforce or do tertiary training, you'll have TAFE or uni teachers. Then you'll have a boss or a manager. Throughout entire life, we have people helping us in different ways. It's only when you go into business that people have the mindset when they first start anyway that it's all on us. We a lot of times people just need to be open and say, okay, I need a bit of help here. And what I find is that when people change and have that open mindset, the acceleration that they get in their business is next level. And that's the whole philosophy behind any teaching, is that you're learning from other people's mistakes. So you're not going to make half of the mistakes that other people make.
That's 90% of the value. People don't realize, when they buy a course, they get a business coach, and it could be somebody else's coach and somebody else's business coach, right? But it's not necessarily that they are going to get some elixir of wisdom that will all of a sudden change every little aspect of their life. It's like you will avoid the mistakes and you will speed run, to use a gaming term, your business experience. And the value of that is very different to what people expect. It's a reduction in bad things that happen, not necessarily an increase in good things that happen. But then what you find is 6 months later, the good things are happening because you avoided those pitfalls. So, and what I think is interesting is we will go and get someone licensed as a spray technician, or we would do a course like that on an aspect of our business. So we will go and get a spray technician license. Let's say it's $1,000 to do that. Some are cheaper, some are a lot more for whatever reason. But you go, oh yeah, that's understandable. But somebody goes, I want to do I don't know what it is, $300 a month for coaching, and you do that for 3 months, and it's the same price. I don't know. Why? Why is it one is good and the other is bad? Somebody goes, there's a business coach course, or let's even just say a social media course for $200 to work out your social media, and I don't know about that. It's like, mate, but then you go, oh, there's a new I don't know, there's a new type of line trimmer line.
Yeah.
And I've already got everything I want, but I'll spend $200 on a new roll of line trimmer line because it might last me 5% more. There's this weird value, and I find it, I'm going to go completely off business here for a second.
Come on, hit me.
Yeah, the other thing that really surprises me is with marriage too, because people will go, okay, what would you say is the most important things if you're a small business owner in your life? Most important things in your life, you'd be like, I'm doing it for my marriage, I'm doing it for my kids. Right, I'm doing it to buy a house. They're the goals that you're getting.
Yep.
You're running a small business, and so let's say they're the four most important things in your life, right? Maybe it's your marriage, your kids, your house, and your small business. Who out there is buying marriage courses, is getting marriage counselling? No one. Who's buying books on parenting and parenting? No one. Who's buying financial stuff on how to buy a house? No one. Who's not no one, but very low numbers, very low numbers, right? Who's going to the KFC drive-through? All of us. Who's making other purchase choices that cumulatively over the year? And it's like, man, so what is your actual priority? Do you prioritize your marriage? Well, yes, it is priority. Are you getting marriage counselling? Oh, I don't know. That seems weird. It's like, well, you get coaching in other areas, and so it's really interesting when you really drill down on what your values actually are and where you actually put your money. They often are very different. And the reason is that every single day people are seeing hundreds and hundreds of advertisements, usually on their phone, podcasts like this, we're guilty too, right? But you listen to these advertisements and very few people are advertising marriage counselling. And it doesn't run up. But you're hearing your McDonald's ad, while you're watching the footy and you're seeing, the whatever else is going on. But it's interesting. Do you value what you value and where your money goes to? Are they actually aligned?
Do you know what I think is the part that makes it difficult for people is it tangible or intangible? Sometimes it's hard to value, compare the value of something that's tangible versus something that's ethereal.
Yep.
And one thing that I try to get anyone that I work with to do is to write down those things that they value, like in one of the very first sessions, and refer back to it all the time to try to combat what you just said in terms of all the stuff that's in our face all the time is the physical things. How our relationships are, how the business health is something generally that's more difficult to see. And so having something that is forced in your face by a business coach, or maybe it's like a dashboard in your CRM, if it's in your face, you'll be more likely to value and make changes to it. Yep. Many people like have sayings around that, like what gets measured gets managed. There's a bunch of different things that you could go along that line, but I think that's one of the key causes for that type of behavior.
I think I want you to chime in with this. If you're starting out a business, okay, what would you be buying first? And let's assume that you have a vehicle, right? And let's assume that you have 3 tools that you need: mower, line trimmer, blower. You have those 3 things, okay? What are you buying after that?
I got a good answer to this. Anyone who's from this industry who's had a call with me probably hear this. I'm buying a really good pair of secateurs.
Yep.
A silky handsaw, a folding one. Yep. Falcos. I'm buying a silky Gomboy folding handsaw specifically.
Hold on a second. You keep talking.
or a Zubat. And I'm going to buy a Japanese. And the third thing would be a Japanese weeding sickle.
A weeding sickle? I don't have one of those. Yes. I've let you down.
The reason is because those 3 tools, basically once you buy them, don't require any maintenance apart from giving them a wipe down. And you can charge the same hourly rate as you would with doing bush mowing. You can charge $100 an hour with those, doing trimming, cleanups, weeding. and every house that you service already needs those services.
Yes.
If you added one tool to that, it would be a nice pair of hand shears. If you didn't have electric shears.
By the way, you're starting to look evil again with the lighting.
I know. Sorry, it's getting dark here in Brisbane.
Yeah, no one's judging you, but we're doing this before you jumped on. I think it's the brightness again. I don't know if you want to try and adjust it while I'm speaking to you. But if you can't, no one's judging. I had light shining across my face earlier, and I was like, "What do I do?" What I was going to say: if I'm starting out a business, I love that mentality of like, what's the cheapest tool you can get that's going to help you out. And I think good quality folding saws are underrated. I think reciprocating saws are underrated in the industry. If I'm starting out again, right, and you go, do you want a chainsaw or a reciprocating saw? 9 times out of 10, I'm going reciprocating saw because it can do what mostly a chainsaw could do. It's slower, but it can do more things, right? It can cut my irrigation pipe with a different blade. It can cut roots. I can change the blade. I don't need oil. I can fit it in a much smaller area. Blades are $6 each. I don't need to sharpen my chain. It's safer. I can use it one-handed. There's lots of different benefits to it. There's negatives, but I'm buying that one first. But where I'd be going in this conversation is, do you know what I would do? I would buy, here's some books I would buy. I would buy Profit First.
Yeah.
I would buy Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, which is a negotiation book, a communication book. I would buy, I'm not kidding on this, I'm not being facetious on this, I would buy marriage books and I would buy parenting books. Why? Because you are going to have stress in your life running a business and it is going to strain the other parts of your life. And you want to be healthy in those areas. That's why most people started them. And let's not assume that's going to happen for free. I would not be against getting coaching for those areas of my life, specifically communication, marriage communication, business communication, those sorts of things. And they feel ethereal and they don't feel tactile and real, but you'll be surprised at the value that they have going forward. You'll be surprised. I would never split the difference. There's a service called what's it called? Mastermind, or anyway, it's a course business. It used to be advertised all the time on Facebook and things like that. And
I've done one of their courses.
Yeah, it's $200 something a year or something like that, and it gives you access to a bunch of these courses. And I purchased it just to buy the Chris Voss thing, and I'd listened to a lot of his podcasts, I'd listened to his audiobook, and I still went and got the course because these were things that I wanted to nail. And I have done negotiations that are worth hundreds of thousands of dollars because that's what contracts are in this industry, and I think those communication skills have earned me tens of thousands of more than I would have. And if you could have them from day one, fantastic. If you could have a healthy marriage, how would that support your business? If you had a healthy business, how would that support your marriage? And, this might seem self-serving, but it is 100% true. If I was starting my business, I would buy my own business course, hypothetically, because that's how I made it. And then there would come a point in time where I would go and get a business coach. And if it was Darren or Tom or anybody else, it doesn't have to, we're not, self-serving in that aspect. But that's genuinely what I would do. And I would, like you say, I'd forgo the ride-on lawnmower for a short period of time to work on those skills, because if I get those skills right, I'll be able to afford the ride-on lawnmower, whereas some people out there will buy the ride-on lawnmower, not get the work it needs, and in 3 months' time sell it, maybe 9 months, a year, sell it for $5,000 less than they purchased it for, lose the $5,000 and realise maybe you should have spent that $5,000 on negotiating, and all the other stuff we just talked about. It's a different way of thinking, but I'm genuinely serious when I talk about that sort of stuff, whether it was us or someone else. You go.
No, I love it. I absolutely love the book recommendations. Like in this industry, that's one thing that I miss now that I'm not actively gardening, is listen to audiobooks. Yeah. It's something I miss. 2 additional ones I would add to your list are Clockwork by Mike Michalowicz is an amazing book that gets you in the right frame of mind for building systems, and Built to Sell. So that refers right back to our discussion around, making sure that you have plans in place if you get injured or you can't do it again. It's an amazing book to give you in the right mindset. But I'm 100%, if I had to restart right now in the industry or in another industry, I would 100% be getting a mentor or a coach straight away and doing as many relevant courses as possible. The courses that you're talking about, I actually have done 2 in the last couple of months. One was called Conversational Capacity, and the other one was called The Influential Communicator, both of which are right down that line of thinking, and they are worth their weight in gold. Help you just with normal communication with your customers, negotiation, speaking and managing employees, which is another critical part of this industry that once you start getting employees, you need to learn those skills. Otherwise, you're going to have churn like we're seeing in the group in the LMCA all the time, people struggling to find good employees. Those skills just help you out throughout your entire life, and also in personal life as well.
If you get to that next stage, because those things I was talking about, that's day one. Like day one, I'm working on those things. If I'm going to the next stage and I want to take on employees, I wouldn't be doing that without, if I was restarting my business, I would not be hiring employees without taking on Darren. Darren is my experience with, but somebody else who's a coaching you might have experience with. And the reason is that Darren is somebody who has run a business with 70, 80 staff, and he had done a lot more hiring than I had. And the third time around, when I tried to grow my business, when my health was going downhill, Darren came to some of the interviews that I did. And I'd recommend that if someone was working with you, Tom, and I don't know if it was physically possible or something you were offering, how valuable is it as a business owner who's never hired before to have somebody in the room with you, right? And let's say it costs you, I'm going to throw out a huge number. Let's say you go to multiple rounds of interviews and you've got to get your coach with you a lot, and it's $2,000-$3,000. That person, you're going to be paying them $70, $80, $90, $100, $120,000 a year. Why wouldn't you spend the money? And again, it's one of those things where it's like that amount of money in the coaching. It's like, I'm paying them extra amount of $100 an hour. It's I don't know. No, man, that experience is so valuable. To have a second set of eyes, to have somebody, I would ask a question, Darren would follow up with the question, and it is so much more helpful than what you realize. 100%.
I've sat in vendor negotiations. I've sat in when a client was hiring a vendor. I've sat in on phone interviews, a couple of in-person ones. And it's extremely valuable for businesses to have someone just on their side. And it's often the case of you don't know what you don't know. And having that experience of the person next to you that may not have gone through the same path, but they have business experience, can help in that realm. And that doesn't necessarily mean it needs to be a coach either. Maybe you've got a partner or a family member that's also run businesses that can sit in with you, or maybe just a friend or a mentor. But just having additional experience in those situations is super beneficial for sure.
Let's talk about hiring a little bit quickly here, because another thing that I did early on, which I wouldn't necessarily do now, is now I have a warehouse. I can interview people at a warehouse if I wanted an in-person interview. But back in the day before I had that, you've got to do something. And I used to do my interviews at Dome. And it was okay. But now looking at it, I don't realize that you can hire office space. You can hire office space for a day. And that's another thing that I would do, because there's a message that it sends that we're actually serious about our job. And we know we're a small business, and maybe we work out of our home, and we're not trying to pretend to be something that we're not. But there is a care and consideration that if someone's hired you and they rock up and it just looks like you cut corners all the time, from day one they think they can get away with cutting corners. And if you are hiring somebody and they from day one think these guys take everything they do seriously, even if they're not the biggest business in the world, then they're going to try, take things seriously too, because that's the business that they feel they're working for.
100%. I agree with that. I've recommended some people I've spoken with to either get a small workshop like you have, or actually pay on a monthly basis to get time at a co-working space or whatever it may be for that exact reason. Secondly, sometimes as business owners, especially if you have a family or young kids at home, or maybe a partner that works at home, it's extremely distracting trying to get stuff done where other things are happening. So there are a lot of people that I talk to where it's not just the benefit of portraying that business that you want to become in terms of organized, efficient, have their own space. It's also an efficiency for yourself to make sure that you're focused and getting your things done there too. And that plays double effect if you've got an admin person.
Yeah. I also feel like this comes back to our advertising conversation, where if you've been advertising for 10, 15 years, maybe not even that much, let's say 2 years, you've been advertising for 2 years on Facebook, let's say Facebook, it's likely that the people who you want to work for you will have already, that's the word I'm looking for, already have seen your ads. And they've already maybe clicked on a link, and they're aware of who you are. And even if you're a small business, there's an additional benefit to that when somebody puts a job up and they go on Seek and they see, hey, Tom's hiring, or Sally's hiring, and oh, okay, I've seen that business, I'm familiar with that business, that's a little bit more likely to have somebody hire or at least apply for the job. And there's these side benefits that people don't realize too. Full circle back to that marketing conversation we were having before. Those things are valuable in a way that is non-tangible but is worthwhile.
100%. In business, once you get to the level where you're needing to hire more than 1 or 2 employees, hiring employees is another function of your business, not just delivering the service. Because the amount of people that will change, especially in this industry, people don't usually stay very long in a position. And so you need to be constantly marketing and hiring.
Yep.
And that becomes a second function. And I actually really like there's a online, quite famous business owner, Alex Hormozy, who talks about this in terms of, we go into business thinking that we're doing one business, and then we learn as it grows that we're actually doing something completely different. And in this lawn and garden industry, we go in thinking we're providing gardening services, but you quickly realize as a service business, the main function after you get a couple of $100,000 a year is hiring and training. That's what business you're in as the business owner, because our biggest cost is labor. The way that you make the most amount of profit is by being efficient, and that all comes back down to hiring and training.
Yeah, and there's those costs again. One of the things for me about like this warehouse and the way we do it, like I remember I had a conversation with someone many years ago who used to work for us, and they were somebody who, nice person, didn't do terrible work, but they didn't love the industry that much. And we used to just chip away at making this warehouse look better and better and better. And there's a lot more plants in here that people don't realize. Like right above my head, I'll show it to you. There's hanging plants like right on top of me. We try and I'll get this camera back to the right angle. We try and make this place look good. And the reason is that I believe, how can we go to a client and say, we're going to make your property look beautiful if we haven't done that at ours? And it's just a little thing, and I don't know how much money it's cost me over the years to hire a scissor lift. I've got to hire one. I've got to. Maybe we can show you that hanging basket there.
Yeah.
If I zoom in, there's a weed in that. It's been growing there for like a year. And the only way I can ever get the weed out of there is if I go and literally hire a scissor lift.
Yeah,
that's one thing I've got to work that out. I've got to hire a scissor lift just to pull those weeds out. But there's all these times that we've gone and we've spent money to make this place look beautiful because of the non-tangible view that if you come and work for Silverstone Garden, we care enough about how a warehouse looks, and that's what we want to, and it doesn't work automatically. It's like magically we have a nice warehouse, that's all our jobs look good. But it's inconsistent of me to say this is a dump, this is it's an uncared for place, we don't care about any of this, and then get upset when my employees don't treat their clients well.
It's the same as if you went to a customer's house doing great work and your vehicle is dirty or messy, or you've got rubbish in your passenger seat and they look in the window. It's the same thing. And I would challenge you on this one. Yes, it is a cost, but you are getting return out of that in employee retention, their willingness to come to work. You probably get less sick days. And again, all of that is like basically untrackable, but
yeah,
it is a benefit to you to be doing that.
Here's some shots fired for people. It is super common that people in the industry will care for their clients' lawns significantly more than they care for their own lawn.
Yeah.
Now, if you're solo, I'm not judging you. But if you are hiring staff and those staff meet you at your house and your house is not the best lawn you look after, that says something. And I'm not telling you that that's my opinion. That just is how it is. I'm just speaking facts here, right? People who work for you will judge your lawn. Now, I have been somebody who has neglected my lawn over the years working for myself. But when I had a lot of staff and I was really unwell, I could still look after my yard, and I did that. And I had an immaculate lawn. I have a pretty good lawn now, but I had an absolutely immaculate lawn back then. And that was the same message. Whenever anyone came to my house, and this is when we had the warehouse, so they weren't working out of that, but when they came to my house, for whatever reason, and they saw the lawn, it was like, that's the standard.
Yep.
And that was I enjoyed it. That was half the reason, but the other reason was to keep that standard. And the other thing that I want to, there's an authority that comes with that too. So you have a customer whose job's not looking so good, and your lawn doesn't look so good, and you're like, hey man, you need to do this, this, and this. The employer's like, what do you know? But when your lawn is like pristine and schmicko, and you go, hey, you need to do this, this, and this, the employer's like, well, he knows.
I think that's natural. It's just being hypocritical, right? You're trying to give a great service and then you can't even look after yourself in that way. I've actually had this discussion with multiple people, and I just give them the example of, okay, you imagine that you're driving up to your mechanic to get your car serviced, and he's driving in at the same time, and he's driving a busted-ass car that has, dings in it. It's sounding terrible. Are you going to get your car serviced, or are you going to turn around and drive away and find someone else?
Mm-hmm.
I know what I'd be doing.
Exactly. People will be offended, but what do you want us to say? It's just like, that's how you do it. If you went to a chef's house and they had a restaurant and you ate the food that they were cooking and you realize that they're like doing Weet Bix and it's not even done well, like they've somehow stuffed up Weet Bix, you're like, I'm not going to that restaurant. And it's like I don't know what to say.
I think anyone who thinks that is wrong just needs to look at the other areas of their life. People struggle to criticize themselves. I was actually watching a LinkedIn video this morning about this university did a study of what percentage of the workforce thought they were above average. And it was something like 97% of people believe they're above average, right? And then it was like, how many percentage believe they're in the top 10%? And that was about 50% believe they're in the top 10%. So it's hard to self-criticize. But if you look at other areas of your life, like the mechanic example, or you go to fast food or whatever, you have your own standards for the services that you get. So you need to apply those same standards to the service you're providing.
Yes. Well, I think a way to put it then is to go, that's not opinion, because what you're talking about is opinion. So what would be the data? How could you get data? And the data would be visual with your lawn. Is your lawn in the top 10% of the clients that you service, right? Or maybe all the clients you service are not high-end lawns right now. So is it something that you could proudly put on a marketing piece?
Yeah. Do you know what I go back to with that, with many customers, is don't look at the outcomes. So like, don't look at the quality of the lawn. Look at the inputs. Am I doing the same inputs on my lawn as my customers? Do I do it the same frequency? Am I like regularly treating it for weeds? Am I doing the inputs, not the outputs? Because sometimes there can be, you can't argue with the tangible inputs of things. You can argue on the qualitative result.
Yes. Yeah. So you might have bad weather. You've done all your stuff, and there's a drought, and you don't have irrigation, and you tried hand watering it, and it's gone downhill a little bit, right?
Yep.
Okay, I see where you're coming from. But I also feel like that's part of the job. Part of the job is to solve the weather stuff. Part of the job is to solve the uncontrollables to the best of your position, or respond to the things that go wrong to the best of your
I think it's
ability.
more a fact of when people look at more qualitative things, it's natural to give us, just in that example of thinking we're in the top 50%, it's natural for us to give ourselves more praise than sometimes is deserved. And if you go back to a quantitative or input-based approach, you can't argue that you didn't spend enough hours on your own property, or you didn't mow it enough times throughout the year or growing season or whatever the case may be. And it's sort of same in the admin space that I often help a lot of people with, is like, how long are you spending? And no one can answer that question. They just don't even think about it. And I say, well, you should be blocking out 2 hours a week. And if you finish all your required admin, then you should be doing your optional stuff like marketing, outreach. And if you have a plan in place to do a set input, there's no arguing about the quality that's going to come out. Well, I wouldn't argue about that. Obviously, there are things that you can do better, but that's something that you work on a consistent basis.
I'm going to fire a few more shots as well.
Okay.
Because one of the things about our industry is there are a proportion of people in the industry who are literally in the industry because they're not very good with working with other people. And there's an authority issue there. And they might be great mates, they might be great workers, but they're not good at being told what to do. And part of that is also being accountable to some of these things. And I'm saying this because I want to help people. I'm saying this because if you can't have someone point out your weaknesses and hold you accountable, you are just going to hit a ceiling. And there's some people out there, I don't know if it's, a deeper issue caused by genuine trauma and, genuine problems that went on. But if you are the sort of person out there who, if you're honest, does not like getting told what to do, that's why you're running your own business, because you want to be an authority. And that's not necessarily wrong. Maybe that's a good fit for your personality type. You're very disagreeable, and we need those sorts of people sometimes. But how many times have you gotten in your own way? Because somebody has come in with some honest advice and you ignore it. Or somebody has given you some feedback as a client and they're telling you some negative stuff, and instead of taking it on board, you've pushed them away, or you've just gone, stuff you. And that's more common in the industry than we'd like to admit. And so the same sort of fiery attitude that you need to start a business can be the fiery attitude that stops you from hearing people's genuinely helpful criticisms. And that's a challenge in and of itself too.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm trying to remember who had this saying, but there's a famous professor that has a saying around, have strong beliefs but hold them lightly. And that's talking to what you're saying, is like having that fire in you is great, but you need to be able to accept and make changes upon criticism or when people talk back to you, those types of things. And honestly, I think if someone is so hard that they can't take any criticism, I don't think there's much helping them. The only help that they can get is when they hit rock bottom, and that mindset shifts. You know, drug addicts are a good example of that. You can't tell them not to take drugs until they hit a rock bottom. If someone is solo and they're doing well and everything seems to be going well, they often won't change their opinion until they have an injury or a personal issue where to solve it, they have to change that mindset.
But you know what I think it is? In this industry, it's easy to be what you think is slightly above average. Now, this goes back to those stats, right? But it's easy to be the guy who is bringing in some money, and you might have some vanity numbers. Let's say you're bringing in $120 an hour. Okay. Now, you think you're doing well, but if you're spending it all, you're not. What's your actual profit margin? If you were to replace yourself as an employee, what profit would you have left? You know, they're the conversations you got to have.
Yeah.
But you have some numbers that you think, I've got this many clients, I bring in this much a month, I'm doing pretty well. 5 years later, you still haven't paid yourself super. You still aren't insured, right, for an injury. Are you really doing well? And they're the honest questions. Your turnover is high. You haven't been marketing, so you don't, you're 5 years in and you don't have any real high-end properties. Interesting. And I'm not playing a competitive game here, but 3 years into business, I had a full-time employee. I didn't do very well with it. I'll be honest with you. I made some mistakes, right?
Me
but
too.
I had enough work coming in that I had a full-time employee. I was working for massive facilities, retirement village, $20,000 plus commercial contracts, a few of them. I was hitting some markers there. And there's an arrogance that came from that when I look back at those numbers, I go, they're not as meaningful as I thought they were. And there's a lot of people in this industry that I think they leave the industry not because they ever hit rock bottom, but because they didn't really quite have that success. And if we're being honest, a lot of it came from, I don't want to be told what to do. And buying a course or paying for a coach or listening to an audiobook every single week and doing all that sort of stuff and being accountable for the information, not just sort of like, what does Chris Williams call it? Mental masturbation.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, like I listened to the podcast. You didn't do anything. Great. Didn't change anything. But yeah, we chug along. We're doing okay. Injury happens. We sell up. And it happens all the time. And you go, do you know what? That was an indication you weren't actually killing it. You weren't, and you could have spent $5,000 or $10,000 or $15,000 on books, marketing, whatever, education, talking to somebody, whatever, and you didn't. And 5 years later, you regret it.
I think that plays a big part into the stats around the failures of small business too, not just in this industry, but across all small businesses. Again, going back to not seeking help, whether that's a mentor, a other business that might be just ahead of you, or a coach or course. I'll say like about half of the clients that I work with is all around accountability and focusing them on the right track. It's not about telling them what to do. And it's that part, once you start to grow your business, there's so many options for you because you're in control of everything. Sometimes you need an external force, whether that's, parents, wife, coach, to narrow those options down for you. And sometimes that's, in some of my clients, it's like you lay out the options and tell them which one would you want. In other clients, it's like, I have seen this before, trust me at my word, do this. And, that's what the person needs.
And here's another thing about this. The psychology of it is, there's something, one of the reasons why the course I do is $800. I could put it up for $50, but what would have happened is people would have bought it for $50 and they wouldn't have taken it seriously.
Yep.
And the reason I made the course was to help people. And in the same way that I filter out bad clients with my high prices on my gardening service, I'm filtering out not bad people. I'm filtering out unmotivated people, and I'm making sure that the only people who buy my course are actually motivated. And then what I say is, if it doesn't help you, you get a 7-day money-back guarantee. That's the same thing for coaching. If I don't know what your rates are, Tom, but if it's hundreds of dollars per session for somebody to get coaching, you really think about it before you do it. And if you're going to spend that much money for someone to tell you something and you don't listen to it, what are you doing? It's the psychology is there. And that's why people don't do it, because they don't want to be held accountable. And sometimes it's because they don't trust you, and sometimes because they need a bit more time to come to grips with everything, and sometimes it's arrogance because they don't want to be told what to do. And
it's exactly right. The more you pay for something, the more you're going to value it. That's just nature. The other part to this conversation is around the format that you like. We're promoting people to get help and mentorship, but we didn't really explicitly say that it doesn't need to be one-on-one personal. Like, that's one option. It can be group, and that doesn't need to be by a coach. It could be you create a group, which I've encouraged many of my clients to do, to create a group of local contractors that they can meet up and help each other. And then a course is another way that's more targeted, but it's a self-paced course. And then obviously you have free resources like a YouTube and stuff. They're all useful. It's just also about being reflective of what do you function best with. If you're a self-motivated person, maybe YouTube is all you need to get going and succeed. Maybe if you're more on the arrogant side, or you need people to tell you what to do or focus you in. I have some people that I've spoken to that have ADD, that they can't do anything. They get blocked unless it's given one choice. So being a bit self-reflective about how best that you can succeed is also, critical in business.
Well, mate, it's getting dark behind you.
It is.
And I think we should wrap this up, but I've had a lot of fun. I think the thing that we're just hammering home in this is if you really think about your business and what you really value, what would you really do with your time and with your money? And for some people, it's marketing. For some people, it's coaching. I believe just being totally transparent. I think the first stage for you for most people is to go and get the free information out there, podcasts, YouTube. Then the second stage is to go pay for some information, and the third stage is pay for accountability. And like you say, like for what you do, that's important. And I've done all three of those myself, and it's not something that I'm trying to force onto somebody. You need to make that choice yourself. But any final words that you would say?
No, I would agree with what you just said and reiterate. For myself personally, I have a career coach and a coach that helps me in business as well, because I'm looking for the help of those people that are above me. But I think one key conversation that I always keep coming back to is the mindset of the people that I speak to, and being reflective of where you are. Because not only important in our personal life, but business is also about understanding where we're currently at, where we are at in terms of the business maturity, but also personally and emotionally, because that's the foundation of where we should go in business and personal progress. So knowing where you are, knowing where your goal is, and trying to get help along the way to reach that goal is the key.
Well, mate, where can people find you?
They can find me on my website. It's thrivingbiz.com.au. If anyone is interested, you can book a free call with me. We'll sit down for an hour, have a chat, see if I can't help. Going back to one of our original conversations, I try and be really tangible on that first free call, try and get people some dollars back in their pocket, whether that's savings or some really tangible advice, so that they can have a bit of confidence that if we decided to continue working together, then they're going to get value out of the engagement.
Awesome, mate. Everybody, thank you for listening, and we'll see you all in the next podcast.